everybody, welcome to Steelers Weekly presented by Geico. I am Missi Matthews. It is time now to get you ready for the Steelers' upcoming game.
We respect it. We were playing them in their home venue. We're humbled and excited to be in these five-star matchups, man. And we will show that appreciation by how we prepare and hopefully ultimately by how we play as we move into the weekend.
Hi everybody, I'm Missi Matthews. Welcome to the Matchup Show presented by Power Home Solar. We are talking about a clash of the Titans, the Steelers and the Tennessee Titans, both undefeated heading into their Week 7 matchup. Joining me to discuss on our panel today, Bob Labriola of Steelers.com. We also have former Steelers, two of them this week. Merril Hoge is joining us, as well as Arthur Moats, to talk about this matchup. Guys, everybody knows the backstory. This game was supposed to be played Week 4. COVID had other ideas, so it has been since moved. So, Labs, I'll start with you. How, if so, is this matchup any different than if it would have been played when originally scheduled?
Well, the Steelers are a different team than they would have been when the game was originally scheduled. Devin Bush is no longer part of the defense. Chase Claypool is now a legitimate NFL deep threat. I think Ben Roethlisberger is a better quarterback now than he was then in terms of, knocking off the rust and that kind of stuff. And I also think that the Steelers are better as a team because they've been able to go through the process of preparing, playing, and defeating, a couple of more opponents since that game was postponed. And I just think that when you go through the process and you're successful at doing that, you grow as a football team. And so I think the Steelers are a little bit farther along in the process now than they would have been then.
All right, Merril, their records are almost the same. Both teams have not lost yet. So what, in your opinion, is different about these two teams for this week?
Well, I think this one, it really hinges to one huge difference. Their left tackle, Taylor Lewan, would have played, obviously, had they played a few weeks earlier. He will not play in this one. And that's a big blow to the Tennessee Titans, not to have your left tackle, a dominant guy. Without him, they have to scheme differently. That'll be a challenge for the Titans based on what Pittsburgh can do. So that's a big difference in this game than would have been had they played 2 weeks ago.
Arthur, what do you see the biggest difference being?
Yeah, I think both Merril and Bob hit on two key things when it comes to the injuries. Obviously, no Devin Bush for the Steelers, and obviously no Taylor Lewan for the Titans. But I think at this point of the season, both of these teams are a lot more battle-tested. When you look at these past two games that both teams have played, they've had one close one and one blowout. When you look at the Steelers, they blew out the Cleveland Browns this past week. The week prior to that was a closer one against the Eagles. You look at the Tennessee Titans, they blow out the Buffalo Bills in primetime. They have a close one overtime game against the Texans. I think both of these teams are a lot more confident in who they are compared to if they would have played at that Week 4 standpoint, where even here in Pittsburgh, we were still questioning the opponents and the teams that they had beaten in that regard. So I think that's the biggest difference right now.
All right, when you start with the Tennessee Titans, you have to talk about Derrick Henry. And earlier this week, Coach Tomlin compared him to somebody on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Take a listen.
There are people that are intimidated by him, and there are tangible things to be intimidated by. This is like Bud Dupree running the football. This guy gets into your secondary. It's like trying to tackle a guy like Bud, except he's faster, obviously.
All right, doing a little sizing up of Derrick Henry and Bud Dupree side by side. Bud is 27, Derrick Henry is 6. Height, Bud is 6'4", Derrick Henry is 6'3". The weight listed by both teams on their websites, 267 for Bud Dupree, 247 for Derrick Henry. Their 40-yard dash back in the day, 4.56 for Bud and a 4.54 for Derrick Henry. So, Labs, does this put into context what Derrick Henry is able to do and how you do not want your secondary to have to try to tackle him?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Derrick Henry, he's a load, but he also has sprinter speed. I mean, and that to me is, something that you just don't see in too many NFL running backs. A guy who has the ability to run over a defensive lineman or a linebacker and then run away from a defensive back. You just don't see that very often in the NFL anymore. And, the Steelers have a big job in trying to deal with this guy. If I had to suggest a way to do it, I would fight fire with fire if I was the Steelers. I mean, you look at Derrick Henry, he's averaging 117 yards a game, 4.8 yards a carry. But you look at the Titans defense, their run defense, they're giving up 137 yards a game and 5.1 yards a carry. So if the Steelers are able to run the ball, control the clock, you can keep that freight train in the station for a good bit of the afternoon anyway.
All right, Merril, I know you like to watch a lot of film. How does the Steelers defense that we saw shut down the run against the Browns last week take that over and to apply it to Derrick Henry?
Well, I think the first thing you have to identify is the style of runner Derrick Henry is. I think we've already documented he's a big, fast, physical runner. The thing he's improved that he didn't do in college and his first part of his NFL career is be decisive and attack downhill. He does that. So in order to defend a guy like that, you also got to look at his weakness. He does not move laterally very well. Doesn't change directions very well. So that's the ultimate goal. You have to win at the point of attack, and you have to make him stop his feet and move laterally. If you can do that on a consistent basis, you have a chance to neutralize him. Now, if you go back and look at the Texans, and you talk about team discipline, if you go back and look at his 96-yard run that he had, 94 or 96, that big run that really was a game changer, you had one guy out of position, one guy that should have been in the gap. He wasn't even blocked, but he was trying to be a hero and play to the other side where a linebacker already was. Had he been where he was supposed to be, he's at least in the hole with Derrick Henry. The other thing you have to realize, you don't even have to be in a team meeting to know this. You could watch any sports highlight reel. Don't be on the highlight reel. He's an upright runner. He gives you a lot of target area in the hips and thigh area. Tackling and use the art of a tackle around the hips and the legs and bring your arms and wrap up. Don't try to tackle him up high. You're not going to win that battle, and you're going to be on the highlight reel. So if you understand those things and you play within that structure, you have a chance to neutralize him and slow him down.
All right, Arthur, what else can you add to how to try to contain Derrick Henry on Sunday?
Well, I think both of the guys, in terms of Bob and Merril, did a phenomenal job in breaking them down. Merril is absolutely right. He is a very upright runner. But for me, I look at it in terms of our interior D linemen. I'm talking Cam, Tuitt, and Tyson Alualu. They have to dominate the interior portion of that line of scrimmage because, like Merril said, with Henry, once he's decisive and he's downhill, he is a nightmare to deal with.
Don't go anywhere. There's plenty more when Steelers Weekly, presented by Geico, returns. Welcome back, everyone. Steelers Weekly, presented by Geico, continues. Welcome back, everyone. Talking about the Steelers and Titans Week 7 clash in Nashville Sunday, 1 o'clock kick. Let's talk about the Steelers offense now. And Labs, I'll start with you. We've seen them be able to put 30-plus points up on the board 2 weeks in a row. Is this Steelers offense rolling in? Do they need a number one wide receiver to make this continue to work?
I really think that in today's NFL, the concept of a number one wide receiver is a designation that really doesn't mean anything. I mean, you have so many different personnel groupings. There are so many different plays where you're deploying multiple wide receivers on a specific play. And when you have a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, he can find the open guy. He knows where the holes are in the defense, and he can make all the throws. And so, to me, having a number one receiver for an offense that is quarterbacked by someone with the physical skills and the mental acuity that Ben Roethlisberger has, I just don't see it as a big deal.
Merril, what's your take on this?
Well, they actually already have one, Claypool. When you look at a guy that is usually a mismatch, who can move around and is going to be a problem for defenses no matter how talented they are on the back end, he's a problem. Where he can play strong side, weak side, and in the slot. And he's not the only guy. I mean, they've got a lot of guys. Washington's dangerous with his speed. You got Juju Smith. And let me just add this to this equation that is always lost when we talk about wide receivers. These guys have been significant in the running game. They've been really significant in getting nice runs in the running game, the way they block downfield. That's a big part of being a team guy and a complete team and a complete wide receiver package. But there is a whole host of issues that these defenses are going to face. Claypool is becoming a big one because of the matchup problem, though.
Arthur, in your opinion, Ben said he's spreading the ball around. Everyone's happy. No one's mad about it. Coach Tomlin downplayed it this week as well. Is that true? You've been inside the locker room. And what do you think in terms of having a number one wide receiver?
Yeah, so first off, I think that the Steelers wide receivers have done a great job in terms of not having one person be upset that they're not getting the touches. We've seen Ben feature different receivers this year in terms of who's going to get the most targets. This past week, it was James Washington. A couple of weeks ago, it was Juju. And then we also saw Deontay get a good amount of targets earlier in the year when he was healthy. I think that plays into why the offense has been so productive, because you haven't had a receiver to just key on. And in terms of them having the number one receiver, I do think that Chase will be that guy. For me right now, I'm not ready to crown him, just because when I think of a number one receiver, I'm so accustomed to seeing the guy that draws the number one corner, and that number one corner follows him around. And if he's not being followed around, he's facing a double team and things along that nature. So until I see him start to draw that type of attention consistently, that's the only reason why I haven't necessarily viewed him as the number one. But overall, I think that all those guys are doing a great job. And once again, I mean, we talked about Juju Smith-Schuster and how selfless he's been. During a contract year, man, to kind of take a back seat a little bit to a younger player like that is not easy to do. But I wanted to applaud him for just his professionalism in that regard, because we've seen numerous examples of guys not handling it like that, especially during a contract year.
All right, sticking with the Steelers wide receivers, we do have a fan question. This one is from Linda. She wants to know, which wide receiver do you think will have a big game this week against the Titans? Labs, do you want to guess, or do you have any thoughts on this?
I will go with Chase Claypool. I just think that the rapport that has developed between the rookie receiver and the veteran quarterback now is to the point where I think Ben has a lot of confidence in Chase Claypool to make combat catches, to make the plays down the field. Ben likes to go down the field. And so, I think that what we're seeing is, what's developing there is Chase Claypool may not always end up with the most number of receptions, but I think his receptions will have the biggest impact.
Weekly is presented by Geico, where 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on your car insurance. Hi everybody, I am Missi Matthews. It is time now for Scouting by SiriusXM, and you can subscribe to SiriusXM's best package, All Access, and get your first 6 months for just $50. Fees and taxes apply. See offer details at SiriusXM/scouting. Joining me once again, former Steelers quarterback Bruce Gradkowski. Bruce, Steelers, Titans, both 5-0. They were undefeated the first time they were supposed to meet. This is probably, in my opinion, the best game on the Week 7 schedule. What do you think?
Oh, I'm excited. And honestly, Missy, I think this played out to everyone's benefit here. I mean, these two teams still undefeated a few weeks later, and now the hype is real. I mean, both legit teams. I feel like they're actually built very similar. I think really good leaders as head coaches. Vrabel played the game, good communicator, both of them. So, man, this is going to be a great matchup.
All right, Bruce, I want to start with Derrick Henry. Coach Tomlin said that is basically the equivalent of Bud Dupree carrying the football. So how did the Steelers even begin to stop him? We saw what he did last week in their overtime win.
Well, I think Tomlin's pretty accurate in that sense. I mean, the guy's a beast. I mean, and a lot of teams struggle tackling him. You have to gang tackle. You have to fly to the football. The Steelers do a phenomenal job defensively, flying to the football, and everyone getting in on that. They did a great job last week against the Browns, getting them to stopping the run. And I think that's the main key this week. But I look even more, Missy, to Ryan Tannehill. I mean, the guy is playing very efficient. Last week, his quick game, 1 to 9 yards, 18 to 19, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very efficient, gets the ball out of his hands. And also, Missy, I have some concern with the play action pass. The Steelers haven't faced many play action passes this year per our PFF data. And, the Titans do a really good job at that. Offense coordinator, Arthur Smith. So when you go to stop Derrick Henry, hey, you got to be aware of the little passes behind the linebacker. So I think the Steelers need to do a good job against the play action pass even more so.
All right, other than those two guys in terms of the Titans offense, who's the next name that Steelers fans need to know?
Well, I mean, look, they get some of their receivers back this week. They're very talented outside. And you have to think about Taylor Lewan. He's out with a torn ACL. I think this is going to be a big matchup for the Steelers defensive front to get after Ryan Tannehill. They have to take advantage of that. On the other side, Tennessee's done a good job all year protecting Tannehill. Number 4 in our PFF data with the least amount of pressures generated given up. So it's going to be a good matchup once again up front in the trenches to see who wins that battle. I think the Steelers have a big test this week, but I think they could pull it out.
All right, on the flip side, Ben Roethlisberger said after 5 games, he feels like they are a balanced offense. So what are they going up against in terms of this Titans defense?
Yeah, I mean, you figure Vrabel's a defensive guy. They're physical, they're tough, mentally tough as well. And Ben's right. I mean, the Steelers are in a little groove. They're in a rhythm. I think they figured some things out last week against the Browns. They tried too many RPOs early in the game, and that's not always easy for the quarterback to read or adjust to. And I don't think Big Ben's a fan of that. So I want to see the Steelers do a better job in that sense and doing what Ben's comfortable with, because the Titans will switch up coverage. They'll try to confuse you a little bit. So, man, make it easy progressions. I love the quick game, the screens that they've been running, and getting the ball to the backs and Chase Claypool. I mean, man, phenomenal. So let the big guy, Big Ben, drop back and throw. And if you do that, man, I think the Steelers can have some success.
In terms of Ben spreading the ball out, it seems like every game there's a different wide receiver who gets the, maybe the splash plays per se. James Washington was this past week against the Browns. Is that maybe overshadowing the fact that James Conner and the Steelers' run game are really effective this year?
Missy, they're all working well together, and that's what makes one more as successful as the other. James Conner is having some success because I love the way he physically runs the ball. Very tough guy. You think of just his background, everything he's been through. So he's a mentally tough football player, which I love. He never runs out of bounds. He lowers his shoulder, and that's great. And then you just talk about Washington. That route last week, the out and up, was spectacular. I mean, to watch a young guy continue to progress and the weapons Ben has, and he's spreading the ball around, this offense is fun to watch. So I think Randy Fichtner's doing a great job of really, spreading the love. It's Halloween. Pass the candy out to everyone. Let everyone get a piece. And I think Ben is doing a really good job being efficient and making smart decisions.
All right, well, it is almost Halloween, so I like the analogy with the candy. We'll see who gets a lot of candy in their trick-or-treat bag on Sunday in Nashville.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be ready with your kids at home all the Halloween. So I'm getting ready with my pillowcase, Missy. Maybe I'll come to your house and trick-or-treat.
All right, Bruce, thanks as always for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, good luck.
Welcome back, everyone. It is now time for our Keys to the Game presented by your neighborhood Ford store. All right, Labs, you are up first. Once again, give us your key to a Steelers win on Sunday.
Play with the lead. I really think that the Titans are a very good team. They're a championship caliber team. However, if they get to play a game the way that they prefer to play it, which on offense means a heavy dose of Derrick Henry, control the lines of scrimmage, force the other offense to have to throw, because then you get away a little bit from Tennessee's somewhat soft run defense. So if the Steelers get ahead, then that will force the Titans offense maybe play a style which it wouldn't be their first choice, and it would also allow the Steelers to probe that what looks to me be a soft underbelly of that Titans defense, which is their defense against the run.
Okay, Merril, what's your key?
Well, I think it's going to be actually schematic things. Kevin Butler has done some very interesting things as far as scheming things, as far as how his defensive front looks. Go to the Cleveland game last week. Their very first play, they come in an odd alignment. You got Cam Hayward lined up over a tight end, and most people talk about matchups being on the perimeter. Well, you look at what they can do in the box. You got a tight end blocking Cam Hayward. That ain't happening. I don't care what tight end in the National Football League, that ain't happening in the running game. And then they have T.J. Watt over with Bud Dupree, and they run blitzing. They played with 5 linebackers against the Ravens last year in the first matchup. I'm looking for all different types of schematic looks that's going to challenge that offensive line and their blocking schemes in order to attack Derrick Henry.
Okay, Arthur, give us your key.
I love all these keys I'm hearing right now, man. We got some offense, got some defense, some run game. But for me, man, I'm talking about these Steelers wide receivers against these Titans defensive backs. We talked about how they really don't have the corners to match up with what the Steelers can do from a receiver standpoint. And we also see that the Titans are averaging, I think it's close to 275 yards per game through the air. I think this is a matchup that the Steelers wide receivers should take full advantage of. Bob has talked about how they struggle against the run. You're not going to tell me that we're going to be able to run the ball, and now they have to commit people into the box, and now from there, you're single coverage on the outside with these receivers, with Claypool, James, and obviously Juju. I think that that's going to be a matchup that the Steelers receivers will dominate.
All right, guys, super excited for this game. We will see who will remain unbeaten coming out of Sunday in Nashville. Thanks to Labs, Merril, and Moats for joining me today. That is going to do it for the matchup show. We'll see everybody back here next week.